Hi, this is Louise, and welcome to this short. I was recently watching the new Top Gun, and it had me think about something that I see change makers do a lot, especially those of us who want to bring new ways, who think differently, and often we maybe don't do it in exactly the way that we could or the best way that we could. And the whole Top Gun thing was that in this movie, so Tom Cruise is wanting to do this mission, and he has this specific idea of doing it. His whole thing is he wants to do the mission, and he wants that everybody comes home. And the only way to do that is to do this flight and do this particular pathway in terms of the flight. And it's a very challenging pathway and flight to do. And so it means going at a certain speed and also doing things that ultimately, when he describes it to everybody, everybody thinks it's not possible. And so he spends quite a big part of the movie. So sorry if there's some spoilers here. He spends quite a big part of the movie trying to be kind of the good boy. He's going to be the good teacher, trying to convince everybody, trying to get them to come along and teach them little bits to do. And he's realizing ultimately that isn't really working. And so he's actually thinking, kind of exhausted, fed up with everything. Any of this sound familiar, by the way? He's kind of thinking, right, I'm just going to give it up. And, and then this other kind of guy comes in, and he's very much what I call the good soldier. This is how we're going to do it. And, just forget what your visionary innovator has just brought along. We're just going to do it at a much slower pace. And don't worry, you don't have to do it in a way that it's going to be as hard as he was saying. And ultimately, this guy is bringing this B option, but which kind of means that everybody who's going to be on this mission will actually not make it home and actually will die. Yes, in the short term, it means it's not so scary, it's not so freaky, it means that actually that crew would not have to evolve to the place where they could do something that was beyond what others thought possible. But ultimately, it was going to be fit for purpose, where it was kind of comfortable for everybody, so much easier for people to accept, to convince, etc. Anyway, so you kind of at this point think that everybody's going to go for plan B, and you're thinking, really, And then suddenly Tom Cruise, whatever you think about Tom Cruise, this was an amazing moment. He gets into the plane and he does the whole kind of course in terms of the practice course, and he does the whole thing. And he shows them that it's possible. And in that moment, everything changes. So instead of being that person who was trying to kind of bring them along and convince them and actually even kind of teach them how to do this little by little and focused on that, what he actually did was he did it. He showed that they could do it. And it changed everything, because what was actually happening is up until that point, everybody was kind of resisting him. But the reason they were resisting him was because they didn't think it was possible. And as soon as he showed them that it was, everybody actually broke through. And I'm not going to share the whole kind of, I've spoiled, I think, enough of the movie, so I'm not going to spoil the whole rest of the movie. That the reason I'm sharing that is that there is a balance to have, in the sense that I see a lot of us as change makers spending a lot of time trying to convince others through our words. And that has its place. That's why I'm talking about a balance. But sometimes, I'm not seeing enough people kind of go, you know what? I'm just going to go and build it and then I'll show you, right? Because what happens is that when we try and convince, there's a lot of resistance that comes up. Part of being a change agent is to enable people to basically bring them with you by helping them to overcome their own resistance. But how you will encounter it as it will feel like they're resisting you. And why all this is important is, yes, that has a place and it has a big place. But in my experience, we spend so much time and energy trying to convince and kind of working with that friction that we almost forget what we're actually trying to break through into. And so we don't spend enough time just building the thing, showing people that it can actually work and just getting on with it. And I know that for a lot of you, you're having to engage people around you in order to do that. But I want you to start thinking in terms of what would it take to, whether it's rapid prototype or it's getting together with a much smaller kind of crew and just getting it done. Or kind of showing something that causes a breakthrough in the mind of others. Because what's really going on in terms of their resistance is, A, they don't think it's possible, or even if they do, maybe they don't think it's needed. That's kind of another one. If it's needed and it's possible, it's can they be the ones that actually contribute to that breakthrough? And what's interesting is if you can build something quite quickly that people can see, it helps with all of those. Because often, again, I see people try and convince, but by trying to describe what it is they're trying to build. I've looked at a lot of pitch decks, for example, from social entrepreneurs. And to be honest, often we're not very good at it. We're not very good at sharing what this thing actually does in a way that captures people's imagination. So it's really hard for them to see why it's possible. And if we've only got the concept on paper, it's often also quite hard for them to relate it to something practical. So it means it's harder for them to make the jump of it's not only needed, but it's also possible to build. Because what's really going on is what we're trying to really influence people to is, hey, you can grow to the point, we can all grow to the point where we can build this together. Whether it's climate change, environmental breakdown, social justice, we can all grow to the point that we can create something better. Which is very different from, hey, let me explain to you why I'm right about this. So it's much more about capturing people's imagination and then showing them it's possible. And in that moment where we show them that's what's possible, it also has them calibrate about what it's really going to take for them to get there. Because when we're trying to work out the gap, often we either underestimate or overestimate. And the overestimating means, oh my God, it's just too much. There's no way I can do it. But in that moment where we show them it's possible, and here I'm trying to give some ideas, but I just say get creative. The more we can show them that, what happens is it's like a whole chunk of the resistance actually falls through. Just like Tom Cruise hopping in the plane and saying, okay, I'm going to stop trying to explain to you until I'm blue in the face that this is possible and essential. I'm just going to get in the plane and I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you enough of this bit so that you will be willing to follow me so that we can do more of it. And so what is the balance that you're having between the trying to convince and influence and actually doing stuff? And what I mean by the doing stuff is the actual showing of something practical and tangible so that they can really see it better in terms of a reality, concrete reality that can be created, that captures their imagination and shows them that it's possible, or at least for a human being to create it. But that's going to be a lot easier than for you to bridge from that human being to actually it's possible for you to be part of the team that creates it.